So heading to 40 participants already in the room, which is very nice. Welcome everyone. If you have just joined, this is the ENHANCE Lunchinar to start in 1 minute about the topic of diversity critics, how to counter arguments against diversity, with 2 speakers in the spotlights, and we will start just in a second. I hope you can see us 3, so 2 speakers plus the slides, and from time to time myself as the host. If it is the case, perfect. If there is something, you can always write to the chat and let us know when something technically is doing strange. Good. It is 12 o'clock. I will just stop the music. Perfect timing that it just stopped. And welcome everyone to ENHANCE Lunchinar about the topic of how to counter arguments against diversity. This is the topic. And let me just share my slide again with you, so you don't have to see me. I'm not that important. Okay. All right. Yeah, welcome. Today we continue our series on diversity related webinars, this time with a powerful and timely topic: how to counter arguments against diversity, as you see also on the slides. Let me see. So we are more than 50 people in the meantime. So very nice. Welcome everyone. So how to counter arguments against diversity, very powerful and timely topic right now. I'm delighted to welcome you to the second session of our ENHANCE Lunchinars about diversity related topics. These bite-sized learning sessions are designed to foster critical thinking among our community in ENHANCE Alliance and beyond, in Europe and beyond, stimulate public debate, and our aim is also to create a space where we can all learn and reflect on pressing issues in academia and beyond in the society. So today's session is not only about defending diversity as a value, it is about understanding where resistance comes from and how we can respond to constructively to that, and evidence-based as well in academic, business, and also societal context. It's also about, let's say, demystifying possibly some myths and misunderstandings around inclusion, diversity, and equity. So, of course, I have to say, before we start the discussion with our panelists, with our guests, there is no one-size-fits-all answer to the question how to counter arguments against diversity. Let's dive into how we tackle skepticism and common misconceptions about diversity together. And for that purpose, before we do that, I will just change my slide. And first things first, before we discuss about basically any topic here, before we proceed, I want to emphasize that this event has the aim to create a safe and respectful space for discussing and learning. So please consider the points I'm sharing with you when interacting also with each other. Keeping in mind, today also we discuss about diversity itself, and diversity is not always visible. So please meet everyone as their own self. Do not make any assumptions about gender, religion, and any other identities of people that you are interacting. So hopefully everyone can participate, and encourage also everyone's right to participate. And last one is really what I really love and like a lot: listen to understand what is said, what is being said, and not just to respond. I will change the slide again. The goals of the ENHANCE Lunchinar I have just mentioned: promoting dialogue and critical discussions about pressing issues. And this would be also great, at least in the time being, to mute yourself. I will just use my moderator powers and mute everyone. And let me see if this works. Of course, feel free to join the discussion anytime when we will have different parts to discuss. And the last part is, of course, expanding accessibility and reach of our offers, because this Lunchinar is basically open to everyone. Today's agenda is about how to counter arguments against diversity, so how to deal with diversity critics. And so we are just finishing the welcoming and introduction part before we come to the real discussion. Of course, we have 2 speakers, 2 great speakers. I'm really very happy to welcome you. We have Dr. Claudia Werker, and Claudia is an associate professor at TU Delft, expert in the economics of innovation, and she also leads TU Delft, which is also, by the way, a member university of ENHANCE Alliance. So her topic in Delft is inclusive research and innovation in STEM, and she also hosts a podcast on inclusion in Science. Welcome, Claudia. Nice to have you here also.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we have also Emelie, Meurk, Demerud. She is a Chalmers alumni in Sweden. So she studied from another ENHANCE at another ENHANCE university in Sweden, in Chalmers, in Gothenburg. And she is an entrepreneur and founder of DEP Point, and which is an initiative that transforms boardroom diversity in Sweden. And she works at the intersection of technology, sustainable innovation, and entrepreneurship, and brings very relevant practice-based insights to today's topic, and also to you, Emelie. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you here. I'm very curious to learn and hear from you how you think about the topics under the big title of how to encounter arguments against diversity. For the public, for the audience, let me see how many people are we in the meantime. It was already more than 50 people. Now it is more than 60. And so you can also ask your questions. There are different ways. One way is to do it on Slido. And I will just change the, no, you see it basically already on the screen. You can add any question that comes to your mind during the discussion. Before you forget the question, just add it. This can be also a question, but also a comment on slide.com by using this number, the code on the screen. I will also put the direct link in the chat just in a while. Just to collect questions for us. Of course, we will look at the questions not during the discussion, but just at the end of the discussion. And the speakers, our guests, will answer the discussions. In the Slido, during the discussion, I will also, from time to time, not so many, but I will have some questions to the audience. So then be aware of that. It means stay on the Slido and go to the Slido.com already now and just keep it open. When you are asked to give your feedback, it is anonymous all the time. You can do it and ask also your questions. Of course, after the Q&A, there will be a Q&A, let's say, like that. After the panel, it means you have basically two options. One is Slido, which is anonymous, and the other option is in the Q&A part, question and answers part, just to raise your hand and microphone on and ask your questions or make your comment. And at the end of the session, like in the ENHANCE Lunchinar is always the case, we will share with you a practical tool that we hope which can help you to deal with the topic of today's webinar better. So I hope it is so far clear. If there are any questions, let me know anytime, basically. Good. Now I will show basically two pictures. And one is from Claudia and one is from Emelie. Let me also show it on the screen. Here we go. Because I ask both speakers just to have a conversations opener before we dive into the topic of all the criticisms that is very timely right now against different aspects of diversity and inclusion. And I asked them to choose a picture that symbolizes today's topic for you. And these are the two pictures, Claudia and Emelie, you sent me, so the public is seeing it for the first time also. And I would like to start with you, Claudia. As answer to my question, you sent me this picture. What is the message that you want to, or what is the symbol that you see here? Please explain us a little.
Well, I want to share with you all that diversity is not only about gender diversity, being a woman, and of course, being at a University of Technology. I know that there is still a lot to do regarding gender diversity and inclusion. But if you have a conversation with people from very different backgrounds and you are not preaching to the choir, which we often do, then it's a very good idea to keep it very broad, because you will meet people who will be intrigued by very different kinds of diversity and to include people with these kinds of diverse backgrounds. Yeah. Perhaps if you want me to, I could share a small anecdote regarding that, but I can also keep it for later.
I'm very curious about that. And if you want, you can bring it just in a while. Maybe let's just hear also a little bit about Emelie's picture and then continue the conversation, obviously. I'm very curious, Emelie, also. You sent us this picture, yeah, where we see two people and, yeah, the leather stairs.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, this was a gender one. So I want to start first by saying that diversity is much more than gender, just as Claudia just said. But I would like to demonstrate that when it comes to climbing in the world of entrepreneurship, or when you are wherever you are, then it doesn't look the same for everyone. And this is the thing that is hidden sometimes, that okay, you see the man here, he has a much easier way to go up the ladder, but the woman doesn't. And it depends a bit on your background, on whatever it is, and this is often hidden. So what I wanted to say with this picture was that we don't have the same route or the same path to success or where we want to climb. And this is so important to understand, because if we are looking at meritocracy, it's an illusion if the system is biased. So it's super important to understand this kind of way. And also when you come to a position, the path is also looking different for everyone. So that is what I wanted to illustrate with this picture.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Back to you, Claudia. I'm curious about your anecdote now. Does it still fit from your perspective? I'm curious.
Yes, it still fits. It is about a series of interviews we did. And we did those with project leaders of engineering projects. And we basically started with asking them, do you consider the diversity of human beings in your research and innovation activities? And all of them said no, but one was very persistent. He said, there is no way that I include that here. This is not to be done. I cannot do that in this project, and so on. Well, we had very nice conversations with all others who were actually very open, also said we wouldn't know how to do it. And then we had follow-up interviews. And we started asking, did you ever have a project where you actually considered the diversity of human beings? And then the whole story changed. It was an Italian professor, and obviously, or he seemed to have had a very ill mother with cancer. And he also had a project on cancer where you have the treatments very tailor-made. And suddenly he was like, oh, that is what you mean. So you couldn't give the kind of cancer treatment to my poor, small, old mother that you would give to a large, healthy young man with cancer. So then it sort of gave him the impression, okay, this is what they meant. And that is also why I try to encourage you not to look for the best arguments, but to connect to people, their values, their experiences, because that is a slow but still the fastest way to convince someone who thinks this is not for me, diversity is nothing for me.
Okay. And is it also this anecdote at this listening to you, and now for both speakers, feel free to react. Is it the reason why we should now have kind of different answers or arguments to diversity criticism, anti-diversity, however you name it, against diversity? How does Emelie? I see you unmuted.
Well, I think this is a super important question, and I think when it comes to this, and what Claudia, what you said as well, I think it's super important that you need to address what people are feeling and what they are actually experiencing, because I do believe that when people are having a certain way of thinking of diversity, it's also a bit of lack of knowledge and understanding of what it is that we actually mean when it comes to diversity. And also when it comes to the business world, like the benefits of diversity. Because what we usually hear is that it's a counter against like growth or profitability, and it's not. So it's actually enhancing that. So I think when it comes to this question, you need to go down to what is the value of the person, just as you said, Claudia, but also if we are in the business world, for instance, it's a lot of numbers and growth. Okay, so go into talking that kind of language then. Because that will also show that diversity is actually a driver here.
We will jump a little bit from your experiences, especially in business and to academia, and I think in both fields and in the whole society is relevant. That's why I think it's okay to do it in a way like that. I just remember our preparation, Emelie. One of the aspects you also mentioned or one of the statements I received from you is diversity doesn't impact the bottom line. Yeah, as a statement that you wanted to discuss on, and with the core idea that diversity, equity, and inclusion are seen as a cost center, not a value driver. Tell us a little bit more about this, please. And also, Claudia, feel free to see if this also fits to academical surrounding that you have, and if or not. I'm curious.
And I would like to go back a little bit about, so as you said in the beginning, I'm the founder of DEB, Diverse Executive Boards. And what we do is that we are growing diversity in the boardrooms and ensuring that we have the right competence. And when it comes to this question, it's usually, in the boardrooms, that's when you put the strategy, you put the growth, the future of the company. And here, this argument against diversity or with diversity is super important, because here you usually say that okay, yeah, but it doesn't affect the bottom line, or they have a perception of maybe also saying that within our specific industry we don't have that kind of diverse when it comes to these roles or these competences. But it's actually not true, because a lot of research and studies shows that profitability, innovation, creativity, everything you want in a boardroom, everything you want in a team to succeed is actually driven of diversity of thought. So we're not thinking about diversity as like gender or it's diversity of thought. It depends on your background, it depends on your age, it depends on everything when it comes to diversity. If you have a composition of diversity of thought in your boardroom or in your team, something that you're supposed to build, then creativity will come, innovation will come, and also profitability. So, and there is a lot of studies and statistics about this. So I think when people are using these arguments, it's super important to counter that with the studies that actually are showing the difference.
Claudia, studies, all this research, this is exactly your business, right? Tell us more. How have you experienced this? But also with critical aspects that you maybe still, I mean, studies tell us a lot, but people still tend to, it's like I always say, everyone knows healthy food is healthy. I should eat it, I must eat it, but yeah, who does it really? Or sport is good. A little bit like that. There are studies confirming something is good, you should consider, but people are not still doing it all the time, obviously. Is it also the same in diversity? How do you see it?
Well, I completely agree with Emelie that we have to point out that there is not such a thing as economic values versus ethical values all the time. It could be, but that is actually what this project I was talking about. It was an EU project with 18 projects we investigated. And there you could see that there are, in fact, quite other bottlenecks. If you have people who are mainly educated in engineering, they have a particular view on how to do that. So what we found out, and we were not looking for that, but what we found out when talking to them is that they have in mind what we call the linear model of innovation. So there is basic research, there is applied research, and there is innovation for markets. And the basic research and also the applied research, because universities of technology are traditionally very close to application and also to innovation, they are done really within the universities. And that means that they do that with glasses on from an engineering background, from their training. And that means that they consider the kind of average human being, and that average human being looks like themselves. And as we have usually white, wealthy men studying engineering, this is why they do it like that. But it is not that they do not want to consider the diversity, they don't know how. So they think along the line in the innovation process, when we go towards the market, these business people will solve all that. And that is the first step that we need to change, and that you can change simply by talking to them, because all of them were very open to this. We had one, for example, who was saying, we have laser technology, I wouldn't know what to do, we are developing new screens. And I simply asked, are you aware of the fact that every 8th man is color weak? So having difficulties distinguishing green and red. And he said, yes, we even have someone in our team with that. We never thought about it. In the follow-up interview, he said to me, we have a prototype now. And I think because we are now moving towards market introduction, that will open up markets for us that were never available and are not available for our competitors.
So this kind of confirms basically, but I mean, if this would be so easy just to create awareness, mindset change, then probably we would not have still lots of these issues.
This is not easy at all, because engineers talk to engineers. They usually don't talk to social scientists. And it's also not so that they have tons of time. Particular also business people. So you need to create time, you need to create space, open mind, that costs time and money, and that is not easy at all.
Yeah, let's talk about a little bit about resistance against opening the minds and being aware of the importance of considering diversity related identities of people just to be more successful, basically, how you both said. To stay with you, Claudia, for a while, where do the most, like, let's say, most common arguments against diversity in academic setting come from, in your experience? I'm also after that curious to hear from business if there is something to add, or is it the same resistance that you both face? Let's start with the academical setting. Where do you see the most arguments?
In the academical setting, of course, you sometimes have groups where you are in fact preaching to the choir, so that would not be very interesting for our discussion. I'm also a part of the Works Council, and I regularly also talk to the board of the university, to all kinds of people within the university, so it's very mixed. And my impression is that people that don't want to talk about diversity and inclusion, or only pay lip service to it, because that is also a way of avoiding it, they often are fearing that we would have a loss of quality, and more often even
loss of quality. Sorry.
More often even they fear for their own careers, because they think, well, if now in particular all these women are coming in, then there is no space for me. So and that you cannot simply solve. There again, you need to talk to people. And if I give, for example, this example I gave with the screens, that is actually for men, that is already a small opening. And what I learned as a member of the Works Council from a very experienced colleague of mine is that you have, and that is very different from what you do as a scientist, you have to repeat the same kind of message again and again, keeping a kind of atmosphere that is friendly, that you do not sort of assume that the others are against you. And
Emelie,
that is often missing in these discussions. As soon as you are confronting each other, everyone is sort of finding arguments to support their position. They are not listening anymore.
And Emelie, are these arguments and the experiences also a little bit confirming to yours? And would you say there is a kind of misinformation also here, even disinformation, let's say, like myths about diversity? All these women are coming in, like this statement that we just heard. Is this something that you also see, or how do you experience that?
Yeah, I do think that I can surely see the resemblance here. But I also see when it comes to recruitment and for instance, we have done like around, I think, 60 recruitments to boards now the last years, and we have seen challenges here that are facing both like we don't have that competence in our industry. We are recruiting based on competence, or the fact that there is a belief that the competence is not there when it comes to diversity.
Okay,
And
there is
so yeah, so that is, it would be a gap, for instance. Like if we are focusing on diversity, then we will not get the competence. But that's like a big misconception, because the fact and what we are doing wrong then is actually that we are not looking outside our own network. We're not looking outside of our own area of expertise. And this we need to put more effort into the funnel when it comes to actually adding in diversity into the recruitment sessions, but also into all these kind of rooms when it comes to boards, when it comes to leaderships and everything. And I want to tell just one thing, and that is I've been in contact with so many companies when it comes to these kind of recruitments, and usually they have this perception, as I said, that the competence is not there. And then when I start by sending the CVs of the resumes of that is anonymous, but they usually know that they are mostly women there, and then they only see the competence.
Yeah, I see.
And then they come back to me and say, wow, okay, yeah, I would like to interview these persons. And then in one case, I actually came so far with them that they were so challenged by the person that they wanted to recruit that they said like, oh, we are not there yet. We can't actually take in this woman because it
Really?
will
Okay.
challenge us too much.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
let me just ask, is it something like what I hear? It goes almost to the direction to be successful and innovative in a diverse setting, we should make make diversity in a way invisible so that it doesn't affect the decision process.
Yes.
Is it a little
yes.
bit going to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But we do that at least.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because we don't want them to we don't want them to
Focus.
see what kind of
Yeah.
what color does this person have, what gender
Yeah.
is it, what age is it. We want them to only go for the competence.
I see. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's super important.
Yeah. My next question is for the audience. I will just I think this fits also to place the question right now, and you can just share your open answer after a short little bit reflection. The question is, which arguments or argument against diversity do you find most difficult to respond to? Yeah, first maybe reflect on what kind of arguments against diversity do you experience or observe? Maybe the examples of the speakers can help you, and think more if you have some other experiences against diversity as arguments, and which of them like the most difficult to respond to. It's an open answer. There is no right or wrong. Maybe we cannot just get inspired for the next step of the conversation with the speakers, and they can also comment on that if you have any. I will just wait for a while. But while people are maybe reflecting also, Emelie, to what you just said, I think this misconception of diversity against, yeah, let's say maybe success or excellence or innovation even, is being used a lot. But I see it in both words actually like that it is confirmed that it's not correct. So in academic word, it is also like inclusion and innovation fit together, diversity and innovation fit together, but also in businesses it fit together a lot. But it is still there, the misconception, even though the studies tell us and the experiences tell us other things.
Yeah, and maybe this, just to lean back a little bit on what you said, Claudia, maybe this is also an easy way to just cover your position, you know? Because when diversity is also growing and taking steps forward into different positions, different rooms that they haven't been before, other people are challenged. Their competence, they also need to step up their competence, because all these when it comes to this diverse group, they have been challenged so far in their career, so they are very on top of things. They are having the education, they are having all kinds of merits to come there. So when they actually enter the room, they are super prepared and they are super bright.
Okay.
And that is a challenge, I think.
You agree, Claudia, or no?
Yes, I do. I'm curiously reading currently what is coming in as most difficult.
It is a lot.
There are many. There are many.
There are many. I think I am forced to use AI after the event just to summarize and maybe ask you after the event for some comments, but just randomly, okay? So because it's really a lot. Thanks for this great participation. When they say you just have to hire the best, right? Would you rather have a woman if the man is better? It's a example of an argument against.
That is a discussion that we have had in the Netherlands very broadly with all the universities, actually. We have what we call the reward and recognition document nowadays, and there many people contributed to a discussion what is actually good. And then we figured out that good is often very closely to what we are experiencing or have experienced in the past, being a good, let's say, assistant, associate, full professor. And then we saw that this, for example, is not so much fitting the way women climbed their career ladders. And many of their talents are also not acknowledged. So, for example, they are often much more into networking, talking to people, supporting students in teaching, and so on and so forth. And that is, of course, also a core value of the university. So we have now a document and very many tools, actually. I'm happy to share that later with you. How you can get this kind of discussion going at your university so that merit and being good is much broader than just bringing in money and leading a research group.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Just a little bit random selection just to address other aspects that I see here in this long list. We will never make it even to discuss 10% probably, but still, I see, for example, the aspect of this is purely identity politics. Like all this diversity goal is put into this, let's say, political setting and identities. How is your experience, Emelie, if you want to add to that?
Yeah.
How this comes
Yeah,
back
of course.
in your-
It's all these kind of arguments are usually quite hard to counter. But if you have that kind of view on things, well, yeah, I think again, it's better to go back to the values and to the studies saying that it's not. I mean, we have so many statistics also saying that diversity is actually driving all these things that we talked about, innovation, etc. And it's not about politics and identity. So it's and diversity, and we also need to say, because then it comes down to also gender again. And we can't say that diversity is purely gender. It's age, it's all kinds of ethnicity or whatever it is, your background, your education. It needs to come down to that. And I want to say one thing, just think about when you say diversity, think about diversity of thought, because that is what you want in the room. Diversity of thought. You want different perspectives in the room. You know?
There were some arguments in this list already going to that when you have a very diverse group. So it is too diverse. And I also read a lot about like this conflicts happening. But on the other side, and one good argumentation at least now, if I also may contribute a little bit, like you also practice like this conflict management skills in an intercultural setting, for example, or different perspectives. But how do you see that? For example, also this, what I mark, another comment from the audience that also fits somehow to this very diverse group, that people cannot make jokes anymore and that they have to weight their every word and feel restricted. Do we have to also learn how to deal with tolerance, tolerating each other, accepting each other? Is it also about...
I think we need to be, in the first place, very honest. This is a learning process. That means we need to invest time, energy, and also uncomfortable situations where we address each other, talk to each other, and tell each other, look, I'm not comfortable with your joke because... And then perhaps figure out with this person what makes me uncomfortable and why this person was making the joke, without being in a position saying, okay, this is a bad person, but simply accepting this was meant as a joke, but I don't like it. And why don't I like it? That is not to say that we have to accept really sexistic jokes or things that are completely out of line. But often we are more in this kind of gray zone where a simple conversation already would help.
And I think it has also to do with respect. I mean, just respect each other. I mean, that's the foundation of this when it comes to these kind of jokes. And I'm a little bit tired of that kind of argument, actually. I've heard that so many times.
So many times, And we go to the direction of values, actually, again, like basically in the umbrella of human rights And so this value orientation, actually, instead of like looking at other aspects.
Yeah, for me, it is important to say diversity is important. I have a background in evolutionary economics, and as the name is already saying, we believe that variety and selection is driving innovation, technological change. And this kind of variety can, of course, as Emelie was beautifully explaining, also be driven by diverse mindsets, diverse backgrounds, and the like. People being different. But accepting that means also that it is much more time consuming, much more messy, not easy to understand. I mean, also in my field, economics, we have this kind of standard economics theories, which everyone basically understands in the field. And people are not happy to embrace stuff that is unfamiliar, coming with completely different assumptions and the like. So that also asks a lot from us to embrace diversity and inclusion. And I think it's really important to be clear about that, that this is not a kind of free lunch where you just write diversity, inclusion, and equity, and that is just happening. This is a process.
And I think also to add on that, it has to do with leadership. So the leadership will be challenged, and the leadership will be more important when it comes to bringing in inclusion and diversity. So, and that's also maybe something that not all organizations or are used to, actually handling this kind of questions and being put on the spot when it comes to leadership.
I think organizations, businesses, but also probably academic
Yeah,
world is so basically those in, let's say, power or in some positions to design things or change things are possibly still learning to. But how does this work then in academic or business level? Doesn't matter. You have this leadership in whatever level it is. And so there is resistance from different levels against all this, what we have been just discussing. So do we need more dialogue between those creating resistance and those facing barriers, basically, and exclusion and discrimination and so on? Do we need dialogue between them? And if yes, how? Are there some experiences on your side for that? Or do you think there are other ways instead of like bringing both fronts together?
No, I think my strong opinion here is that we need to go back to the values again. We need to go back to a very like foundation of values and how we want to build things, how we want to create things, how we want to be. And from there, recruit and build the culture of the organization, of the academia. I think that's super important. And to put them on spot against each other, I don't think that's so successful, actually. But I do think that the ones that are not in the diverse group, so to say, needs to step up and not be silent, because that is where we are creating change. When you speak up, when you are actually backing these kind of initiatives and this kind of culture building and this kind of inclusion, but you're not in a diverse or like a group, for instance, but you're backing it, that's when we are doing change.
You are speaking up, so speaking up.
Yeah, speaking up and taking a stand, and also backing all these kind of initiatives. And it can be either from it doesn't matter what kind of position you have, but for instance, if I take from the business world, if you have a certain position in a company, it's even more powerful that you are actually backing these initiatives, that you are leading with those values. For instance, you are including or inclusive in your leadership style. And also when you're thinking about how you are putting your management team together, how you're putting your different teams together and the board and so on. So it's super important. And also from the startup world, like if you look at not just like the big companies, but also like from the startup world, how do you actually and here you can think about all kinds of different things. How do you take in money? Where do you actually get your money from? How are you funded? What kind of owners do you have? What kind of values do they have? And also you need to be very careful also when you build a board from start, because when you are having a board and the leadership in the board and the perception and culture there will actually mirror how you're building your organization and the company going forward. So it is super important to think from start, also when you're an entrepreneur.
Claudia, how does this sound to you? How is it doable?
I'm, of course, working in a large organization where we need to change the culture, really big time, so to speak. And I agree with Emelie. I don't think that talking or having talks between people who are against or for diversity and inclusion will be the solution. Of course, it's always nice to talk, but I think the most important thing is to also get the huge crowd that is silent on board, a kind of coalition of the willing. But from my perspective, for such a large organization, what you need is really someone at the top or several people at the top advocating for diversity and inclusion and making policy for that. Without, you have a situation where these relatively powerful people source out the responsibility for this problem to those people who are in a weaker position, often discriminated against. So I think it's very important to stress that those in charge are also in charge of this very difficult topic.
I want to just throw in a little bit organically to one question, and maybe we can also discuss about the other arguments. Some of them are formulated as questions. A little bit organically, also looking at the time, because I think there are good questions to shape our conversation further, and you can please comment or react to that. So someone wrote the broadness of diversity. So it's like the diversity of diversity in a way, or the complexity of diversity. Work is exactly what makes it difficult to accept for many. I think this just fits also to what you both just said. It is not that easy. While gender equality, for example, nowadays is better accepted in conservative PPL people, probably. So for me, it sounds like one aspect is more easy to understand or more accepted than all the other intersectional aspects of diversity work. And I think of people facing barriers because of their identities, religion, ethnic background, sexual orientation, and so on and so on. How does this
think
fit?
there is also a silver lining here, because of course, not every kind of diversity or way of living is accepted by everyone, and everyone has biases to start with, and hopefully is aware of that and refrains from acting on that. But the silver lining here is, of course, also that you usually, therefore I gave this example in the beginning with this physics professor, you usually find, if you listen carefully and are really in contact with people, you find some kind of diversity that appeals to them. And that makes it also much easier for them to at least be empathetic with other kinds of people, which they are usually not accepting. So if you have a very good example that sounds with them, that really makes them happy, that they think, well, we can do something about this, then it's much easier to step out of this comfort zone. So in that sense, I think it's a blessing in a way that it is so broad.
Yeah, it is. I like the humanistic way that you describe in this empathetic aspect. Okay. Emelie, do you want to add something to that? Or
I just think, and I agree with you, Claudia. I think it's super good argument here. But what I think also this has to do with is that it's hard for people to put themselves in other people's shoes. I think they don't understand what it means.
Can we train that? Can we learn that?
I'm not sure actually. I think it has to do with visualizing how it is to actually go through maybe a career or whatever, or maybe just opening a bank account when you are not white in Sweden, for instance. I mean, it's just, I have my husband is from India, and we are usually discussing these things because I am discussing it from a gender perspective, all the things that I have discovered when it comes to being an entrepreneur in this world and in the tech world, for instance, which is even harder sometimes. And he discussed it from his point of view, because he has also some things that he has gone through since he is not a white man.
Yeah.
And one of these things was opening a bank account in Sweden. And that's because the perception of Sweden, even for all our Swedes, is that we are quite equal. We are, and also we are not so racist and so on. But it was not easy for him, and he has a very good position. He has a very good job. Not easy for him to open a bank account. So I mean, doing these things, I think you need to just trying to understand that there are so many bias on the way that that all these people are facing in everyday life. It doesn't need to be in the career even.
No, not even, yeah. I think this has obviously relevance, of course, what we discuss here in all types of societal fields in our life. Another question, I think that also fits very well organically. I just like how this just appeared suddenly. How can one talk about diversity issues, what we have just been doing, without using all the triggering terms, but simultaneously without watering down the message? I don't know if the question is clear, but yeah, it's a little bit, so how do we do it question.
We have a lot of discussions with colleagues about that, usually female colleagues, and the jury is still out. I'm tending more to the position of I'm not using terms that are sort of triggering reactions. And
which terms then, actually, by the way, just to be also visible
sometimes
to the
it can be gender equality, something that sounds in my ears rather harmless. But if I have the feeling or the impression that the person I'm talking to would then not be open to any kind of discussion anymore, I just don't use it. And then I name what I want to say in a very neutral way by giving very concrete examples. And I usually then use examples that are close to what I perceive from the person. So
but what do you say then, for example, instead of gender equality? I think many people could be interested to
a fair environment for everyone, for example.
Like that. Okay. So not focusing on the gender in a way. Okay.
It's something, of course, this is not watering down the message, because basically when you come to discussing what you want to do, for example, in teaching, what we do a lot, that means for me, for example, when I form groups, student groups that work together, and we have usually very international classrooms, that I simply, with a lot of Dutch students, of course, as well, that I say, please take into consideration that you have at least 2 nationalities in your group. And that makes it already rather mixed, because otherwise the Dutch students stick with their friends, and let's say the Indian students as well, like that, and that requires them. So then I say we want to use the diversity here, and I would use the term diversity in that context, because I also introduced that by saying who is coming from where and so on. And then this is also not very confrontative. They do not always like it very much, because it's harder, of course, to talk to people you're not familiar with. But of course, they get the message. This is an international program, so let's use the internationality of the program.
Okay. Yeah. And what about your experiences with startups or companies, Emelie? How do you manage that without watering down, or are there no triggers?
Of course there are triggers. I think only using the term diversity could be a trigger here, actually. But I would like to take this to another step, actually, because in this world that I'm in, you need to like handle the biases that are coming to you, the triggers that the people that are asking questions for you, for instance, in an interview, or when you are fundraising. You need to understand the hindrances that if you are from a diverse, from maybe a woman, or if you are from another ethnicity, that you need to understand that you will get questions asked in another way, and then you need to formulate them so that you get the same opportunity as if you were a white man standing there, So that is what we are, for instance, I'm holding in our program, our board program, I'm holding an interview session like about interview technique when you come into the boardroom. And we're talking a lot about talking with numbers and experiences that can be quantified, because the persons that are recruiting to the board is that is the kind of language that they are talking. So if you are going to go away from the bias that the person might have that is sitting next to you or opposite you, then talk the language of that person, because you do have the competence, but you need to express it in the way that they understand it, with numbers, with correct results, what you have done on different positions.
So it feels like our new enhanced training offer is going to happen in that topic, probably, if I hear you saying this as a need for future skills of our students. Okay. Yeah.
But and also another way that for instance, when you are a man, you usually, and you are fundraising, and now I'm generalizing a little bit, but you are asked questions that are potential questions, like what potential does this company have? And when you are a woman standing there, you usually focus on risk. And what you can't do then is to go into explaining the risks and counter argument them, but choose to go for the potential. So you need to change the question and the focus. Then it will give you the opportunity to get the money in a better way. So it's how to handle the bias as well. That is super important.
Yeah, thanks for this. Let me call it tip. I hope for the audience it makes also sense from the very relevant practice that our speakers have here and sharing with you. We look for a success story. I just marked again, it's so much, so it's difficult to analyze, more than 30 entries here. It's impossible, but someone writes, I feel like you can never convince someone. I understand. I also see like that. But it's convince someone of diversity and inclusion that is of another opinion from the start. But that is therefore no point in discussing because you talk to each other. Do you have any suggestions for this or such success stories? Anything that comes to your mind in this field, success stories? It's of course a difficult question because there are many stories around.
Yeah, I can share a success story, but perhaps it's good to again reiterate, if you do not know someone very well, or if you are already in a confrontative mood, it's almost indeed impossible. So it's really relation building.
The process,
the process is important. So to share a success story, as I said, I'm in the Works Council and I lead a group, a working group of the Works Council with the Student Council, where we talk about diversity, inclusion, equity regarding university policy. And we have in the Student Council two factions, and one is more conservative than the other. So the one is almost never sending someone into our working group. So I made a point of telling the people who are supporting us, because it's a huge Works Council and Student Council, to say, well, it would be nice to have someone from this more conservative faction. And they actually gave the message to them. And then even the chairperson of this faction, or not of the faction, but of the whole Student Council, he came. And I thought, well, that is interesting. So we just went ahead with our stories and what we were talking about, our points. And he was completely quiet the first couple of meetings. And then at one point in time, he said, okay, but what you are missing is really, you never talk about first generation students and how to integrate them into our university. And he was right. This passed sometimes in our discussions, but we were never making a point about that. So that was a very good contribution. And of course, we picked it up. And you could see that he was really trying to understand what we were doing, also broadening diversity beyond gender only. And so he was thinking, what do I feel that is missing? And that is, of course, a very nice way of doing it, but also because he was so great about it, to just move into a working group he would never have chosen to start with, and listening and thinking, well, what could I do?
Emelie, what about your
well,
environment?
we have several success stories when it comes to recruitments to board. Like
What is your
to
favorite
talent.
one to emphasize here?
Well, it has been, I can't talk about this specific company, but it has
Sure.
been like recruitments to very homogenic groups of board members. And then when adding, it has been, of course, a threshold from the beginning to even go into this recruitment situation. But then when they have either recruited one or sometimes two persons, and then after a year or two, that they are coming back and saying, "Oh my God, our results and the way that we have handle this in a strategy way, maybe for growing in the market or whatever it could be that the competence add in
Yeah.
where they are super happy and see really the benefit. And they have from the beginning been very skeptical and them being one of our cheerleaders
Okay.
for what we are doing. So that's
Wow.
super,
Yeah.
super cool.
Maybe I come back to you both after this event for an interview that we can publish on Enhance even about this. Yeah, it can be interesting. Thanks for sharing it. We could continue, I think, hours and hours. Like I said, the topic is bigger, way bigger than any minutes that you plan, of course. We have lots of questions and comments also in Slido, so that I didn't even make time or could not even make time now to get some mic on and speak moments. So please apologize that part. I will just skip because of the time, but it doesn't mean the questions and the different comments on Slido are just excluded and so on. So we will, of course, I'm happy to analyze them, look at them, try to create a summary. And if there are some obvious questions that I identify, Claudia and Emelie, I will for sure address you, and hopefully you can still give some 1 sentence, 2 sentence short answer if you feel like. Let's see. I did not analyze the questions a lot because it's quite a lot just to see on Slido, but I think it's also public to everyone, so you can also just look at them. You will see a little bit the directions. I'm very curious also to continue the discussion after the event, but we are not finished yet. We are not finished yet, so we still have a couple of minutes. Let me just share my screen again. And so, because I also want to share with you, we always promise in our Enhanced Lunchinars, after such an inspiring and relevant and timely discussion with our speakers, a practical tool. Of course, a toolbox, something that can help you to deal with the topic is very broad. This can be anything. And now I was discussing with the speakers, okay, maybe let's put AI now on the focus. Of course, even with chatbots, you can discuss and get their opinion and maybe their supportive opinion, how to counter arguments against diversity. So that's why I just end up with this that I am sharing, because one of our Enhance University Alliance members is Chalmers. Obviously, also Emelie is connected to Chalmers as an alumni. And Chalmers University of Technology has just actually created a toolbox, Genie Action Toolbox, it's called. And that is a tool that can help you, possibly, because it's an AI base, it's like ChatGPT style, helps you to find good arguments against diversity criticism. So this can help you. Of course, it's not always like the perfect help, but like I said in the beginning, there is no one solution that fits everywhere. I think we have really heard very different perspectives and experiences from both speakers, and just looking at the questions and comments by the audience, I see also lots of diversity and different perspectives there. So it's really a little bit pity that we don't have like 5 hours to discuss all of that. So this is something that I will put in the follow-up email. The tool is developed for Chalmers community members, university members, but it is public basically. So I can also just try it out, for example, without being in Gothenburg. And I think this is also quite interesting just to give a try. This can help. Maybe about to discuss a situation. Hey, my colleague told me this, made a joke, maybe a sexist joke, or talked about, or I heard a speech about another group because of their identities, they are excluded. How can I respond to that? What can I do? And then the answers can help that you might get. At least that they can help to have a foundation to continue the conversation with real people, obviously. But for those of you who say, no, this is not enough, I'm already doing this and it's really not enough, you can learn more. Enhance Alliance has an online catalog, ISC catalog, Innovative Learning Campus, we call it. And there are different offers there. And some of the offers fit also very well to this topic, to today's topic. For example, Emelie was mentioning it several times, and also Claudia. And so we discuss about biases. there is a very low threshold format that is called anti-bias lunch break. So you can also think of joining that. If you are interested, you are invited. We are in the last minute. And this was the ENHANCE Lunchinar about the topic of diversity criticism, how to counter arguments against diversity. And next week, we have basically the next Lunchinar about IT accessibility. The session will address the topic and its importance. And we will have also several inspiring speakers. And in the next months, we will continue with pressing issues, with offering Lunchinars about pressing issues. If you have a wish or an idea, I'm open to collect them, of course, and we are organically, based on the needs of our university community, developing, of course, our next Lunchinars and looking for formats that we can reach, of course, our audience and maybe trigger you in a way to think more critical and to speak up when you experience or observe all these issues that we have been discussing. So I hope you enjoy this. My last statement is something that I personally like about diversity argumentation is inclusion, diversity, and equity is not anti-white. IDEA is not charity work. IDEA is not PR or marketing. IDEA is not a trend or a hot topic. IDEA is not reactionary or perfunctory. It's not about showing favoritism towards specific identity groups. It is about intersectional approach to cultural and systems change. It is about addressing power dynamics, dismantling inequitable practices, and improving access to resources and opportunities so everyone can feel valued, contribute, and thrive. Thank you, everyone. Thank to our speakers and to the audience for this good contribution and listening to us. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.